Yeah, let's get it going. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. We can help you out here with any questions and help you tune up your stuff or black box, or if you have any just general questions, be more than happy to take them. If you are a patron and you have specific questions, so what we got going on here is I can throw that. If you are a patron, we have the office hours and you can jump into there. We also have the office hours live chat over here as well, so I will hop into that here. And if you have stuff in the that you just want to post in the office hours right here for logs or whatnot or questions, and go ahead and do that, and I'll take a look at those on the live chat and try to help you through it. If it's something a little bit more complicated, you want to ask a question or whatnot, go ahead. I am in the office UAV Tech office hours live chat, video chat thing here. You can jump into there and ask away. Of course, you'd be on the live stream. Be a guest on the live stream. Ooh. So, yeah, I see George jumping in there. There you go. So George had a 12S quad I was taking a look at. So maybe, and he did have a couple things that we were looking at with, I guess, a little bit of jello on his quad. So I need to finish that up. So otherwise, throw your questions in the chat box here. You can see I will see them over here on our chat and try to get to those. I guess as people are rolling in, let's handle a couple chats here. Luke Beam from California says, hey, I dropped my quad in the pool and with the air unit, and do you think it's fried? No, I don't. I would take it out and get it dried off, Luke, and then so with that, I wouldn't assume it's fried. You know, hopefully unplugged everything. They're pretty resilient. I would take it out. I would try to take the case off and let it dry out really well. Leave it for a couple days. You know, the old bag of rice trick. And after that, plug it in and see if you're back in business. So yeah, give that a shot. I mean, they're 185 bucks, even more. So you definitely want to take some extra measures. See if I can bring this down a little bit. High in the frame. There we go. Who else we got on here? Jen says, good evening. It's 10 p.m. from Sweden. Well, welcome from Sweden. You're going to get very long days here coming up. I think so with Sweden, right? When tuning my 5-inch quad, which sophisticated, which has a GoPro, should be tuned with or without the GoPro. So Jen's, I would definitely tune it with the GoPro. You want to have your the weight, really the moment of inertia is the key thing for tuning. We say power to weight all the time, but really what we mean is power to moment of inertia. Obviously, we're spinning things. So you want to have, and obviously that GoPro has a weight associated with it, so you definitely want to have that on there. If you fly it both ways, you know, sometimes with the with GoPro on, sometimes with the GoPro off, I would tune it with the GoPro on and just see how it does with the GoPro off. It might be a little twitchy with the GoPro off. It's probably not that much different, but it could be a little bit different. You might have to move some sliders up and down a little bit. So I would tune it with it on, and then just copy that into another profile if you're on Betaflight, and then take GoPro off and just make some final tweaks or adjustments if you need to at that point. What should happen is with the GoPro off, if you are using the sliders to tune it on Betaflight 4.2, your P to D balance, so I could bring that up here. Betaflight configurator here. I don't even have I'm not very well prepared. I should have one of these just plugged in, shouldn't I? So you should be able to make some little tweaks or have expected tweaks that you're going to make. Let me put this on here. So with the GoPro on, so say you have, I don't know, something like this for your tune. When you turn the GoPro off, or take the GoPro off, you will probably see that you may be able to decrease in Betaflight 4.2 at least. You may be able to decrease your PDD balance. It probably is only maybe one notch, and you may have to actually reduce your P&D gain a little bit because it's a little lighter in motor inertia, so it's a little bit more twitchy. It can react a little bit faster. So this higher P&D gain slider, you might have to bring down like 2 notches. So you might have to have one profile with them, GoPro on, and then another one where you make 1 or 2 adjustments. I would think it's only going to be one notch or so. Obviously, if you're in a other firmware that doesn't have the sliders, you can just kind of translate what I just said using Betaflight to see what that actually adjusts in relation to the balance between proportional and derivative with this slider and also what this one does. You can see this moves both of these gains up and down together. So hopefully that addresses that. What else have we got? Next question. Any conservative defaults for filters in Betaflight 4.3 since the 45 hertz bandwidth is a hair narrow? Yeah, so the it's more than a hair narrow. So in Betaflight 4.3, if you're on that by chance, you will see here, let me flip back over, that the Q value is not there anymore. It's a fixed width, and I believe they're going to change that back. I hope he's changing that back. Last Crepbrot said he is going to change that back. So because I think it's just a little simpler to stick with the Q, and I think it works a little bit better too. So the fixed width, if you do have that on there, and you're using beta releases at this point, so you'd say, well, geez, now you're changing and changing back. It's like, well, that's what you get when you're flashing nightlies, right? It's still in flux. So what I would recommend is if you're using RPM filtering, so there's 2 things, and I don't have it. Well, this is the Betaflight 10.8 configurator, but I don't have 10.8 or 4.3 flashed on this board. Even if I did, this configurator is not the most recent nightly. So this up top here will say number of notches instead of width, and this will say fixed bandwidth here. So there's 2 setups. One is, do you have RPM filtering or not? If you do not have RPM filtering, and then you want to have probably the number of notches between 3 and 4, if you're on 4.3, using the beta software, and then your fixed width for that notch is 45, could be okay, but don't be afraid to move that up to like 80 or 100. So I believe that to equate to the dynamic notch Q of 120, which is the default there, I think you need like a Q of almost 2, or a fixed width of almost 200. So there's quite a bit of difference. The reason the default is so low is because it's assuming you are using multiple notches. So again, if you're going to take that up to 3 or 4 notches, maybe between 45 and 100, see how that performs. If you're using RPM filtering, then you would only need like 1 or 2 notches, and then again keep that down at like 45, because then the RPM has quite a bit of notches on it as well. So that's my best advice there until things kind of settle down with it. You spent 30 minutes underwater, and yeah, okay, good advice there. Hey, Skadoosh, how you doing? Yeah, Skadoosh says the same. Air units are super, resilient. So yeah, definitely don't throw that away. What else we got here? Yeah, I'd make 2 profiles. Somebody also confirming that they would make 2 profiles if you have an air unit or a GoPro or not GoPro. So Jan S also asks, we plan to have in Betaflight 4.2 or 4.3, I guess, a pitch to roll ratio slider? And yes. So let me just flash this real quick as we're talking, because I can flash it fairly quick. But yeah, there'll be a pitch versus roll ratio slider, and we just added in a slider for, well, it's a variable. I don't think I'm going to make it a slider for the, so you can adjust your PD balance on roll and have that different than pitch. So let me get this flashed here, and I can just kind of show you what we're talking about here. Omnibus 4SD, and hey, might as well show here what I'm talking about. So you can easily, anybody can easily flash the Betaflight 4.3 just by going into the current configurator, checking on these show unstable releases, show expert mode, hit development. These are the nightly builds, and you can see that they every time there's a new PR, if there's a new PR, a pull request that's merged in that day, so new code or changes to the project, it will rebuild a new set of hex files, which is only really 4 nowadays, and it has those linked here. So I'm on the Omnibus F4SD, and it's really just as simple as loading it up and flashing it. And then, of course, you have to take into account this warning. If you've never read this, do read this. I mean, it's you're on beta firmware. You know, I know it's Betaflight, but you're on beta firmware running the nightlies. Generally, it's pretty good, but my Omnibus did not reboot. That is odd. I think I might have this set to no reboot. Yeah, that's why. Go back to here. No reboot on Flash. Yeah, I'll check that. Okay. I already did the Flash. Okay, here. Yeah, and just hit Flash firmware. It should flash it over. So we'll take a look at the sliders that are in there. And again, there's going to be another variable. I was thinking not to make it a slider because with sliders, less is more. You know, you start getting too many for too many of the variables, and you know, people get overwhelmed. So yeah, so we'll wait for this to flash up, and then I'll come back to that real quick. All right, what else we got? Can you talk about the new RC smoothing with Betaflight? Do higher numbers mean the PR is smoother? So Bob S asks, so there's new RC smoothing. Basically, instead of having a biquad filter, and I'll show that here in a second. So let me apply these defaults and get back into there. But right now, your RC signal comes in any firmware, and it's stepped. So think about a bunch of stair steps as you're moving the sticks. You might move it nice and smooth, but that translates to a bunch of stair steps. Now, if you're on these really fast, high performance modules, those stair steps are really close together, right? So there's a lot of fidelity, a lot of precision in those, and that's why they're doing it, right? To get more accuracy, more resolution. If your packets are farther apart, like 20 milliseconds instead of like 2 milliseconds or 4 milliseconds, obviously those stair steps can be pretty big as you're moving the sticks fairly quick. So that needs, those stair steps really need to be smoothed out. If not, you're going to get jerky commands to your motors. So that's one of the things, like, I mean, KISS doesn't smooth them, right? But then the commands to the motors are, it's like anti-lock brakes, you know, as it's telling the motors to go rev up and rev down. Those are, it's jerky. It's kind of saying, you know, go to 100%, go off, go at 100%, go off, go to 100%, go off. So Betaflight smooths that, so you don't have that jerky thing. Same thing, iNav smooths it. All of them smooth it, except KISS really is the only one that doesn't smooth the RC signal. And then what's the advantage of smoothing that RC stepped signal coming in is that you can also then boost it, right? So you can apply things like deset point weight. KISS or Flight 1 has sim mode, so they're boosting the RC signal somehow with sim mode. Betaflight has feed forward. EmuFlight has D term set point weight right now. They're rebasing on Betaflight, so that would be feed forward in the future. iNav used to have D set point weight. They have feed forward now as well. So there's different ways that people are boosting the RC signal so that it gives more advanced commands to the quad as you're moving your sticks. It's like the mouse accelerator thing that you used to have in, I guess it's still in Windows, but in Windows 95 might be the first time you ever saw it. So to boost the signal, you really need it to be smoothed out. And if we look in here, and then I'll come back to the other question with the smoothing. If I jump down to Receivers tab, there is these options for smoothing here. You can see it's actually not shown here. Well, I guess they might have switched it already. But the default for the input smoothing here used to be biquad filter. And if you ever looked in a black box log, you'd actually see when you did a sharp move, you'd see your set point go up above your max rate a little bit and then come back down. So it had the biquad filter caused it to have a little bit of an overshoot. So instead of doing a biquad filter, what you could do is just multiple PT1 filters in series. So there's a PT1, and then there's going to be a PT2 and a PT3. So it'll they're all just going to be PT1 filter types, which is they're all just low pass filters, right? It's without getting into too much detail, it smooths out a signal, right? A PT1 is not a biquad is twice as strong. It smooths it twice as strong. It has twice the amount of delay on the signal as well. So instead of doing a biquad, which is some kind of more complicated math and does have some overshooting characteristics and other little things, you could just do multiple PT1 filters in series and kind of get the same attenuation, but you don't have that overshooting issue. And it's a lot simpler to run. So you can get the same results, but you can take out a couple negatives. One negative is the overshooting. You can take that out of the picture. And the other negative is the amount, the biquad filter is much more calculation intensive. PT1 filter is very simple in mathematically. So you can make the firmware run a little bit more efficient just by running it in series a couple times. That's really it. That's all the magic is. It's just instead of one biquad filter, you'd have either a PT1, PT2, or a PT3. And the PT1, 2, and 3 just means how many PT1 filters you're going to have in series. Just 1, 2 in series, or 3 in series. Obviously, it's just 1. It's not in series at all, really. So that's what's going on there. But folks are liking the results of that, so that's where it's going. And this is interesting. I have no receiver plugged in. It's jumping all around. Coming back to the sliders. By default, this would be the number of sliders in Betaflight 4.3 you're going to see. So with expert mode turned off, you can see, you can't see it, my face is in the way, but you'd see the 3 sliders. So we kind of simplified it a little bit to the main 3 sliders of PT balance, PT or P&D gain strength, and stick response. And this slider, this PT balance is, I'm going to say fixed because it used to be this way in 4.1. Then in 4.2, people broke it without going into too much detail, and they reversed it so that as you increase this slider, it actually increased the D term, which was complicated because then it was just confusing, right? Because then you say, well, increase your P&D gain balance or PD balance slider, but that actually made the quad dampen more, so it was like reverse, and it just was very confusing. And then also a lot of times if you move this slider up or down, then you had, your D term moving up or down, so you'd want to readjust here. And so now it's a little bit more simplified. So do be aware of that if you switch from 4.2 to 4.3, that this has been fixed. If you go from 4.1 to 4.3 and skip 4.2, then it's the same behavior. And then with expert mode enabled, you get a lot more sliders. It could be overwhelming. And then if you're like, hey, that's overwhelming for me, then don't turn on expert mode. It's pretty simple. So it does give you a lot more flexibility for now. You can adjust I term independently. So as I move I term down, P&D gain moves up. You can see that I can kind of adjust like my master multiplier, and then I can bring down I term, and it just gives a little bit more flexibility. I term. A lot of people wanted some more flexibility there. You can adjust this dmin drop. So if I increase this slider, you can see that the drop between dmin and dmax, you're actually increasing these gains here, so that this drop between the two is not as substantial. Obviously, you go all the way up, then it just turns off dmin because there is no drop at all. And then the pitch roll is what you asked about. So if you move this slider up, all the PIDs on the pitch axis go up and the roll holds constant. So you can do things like, hey, I'm going to move this up, but then I want a little bit more on pitch or a little bit less on pitch. So you can kind of make those tweaks. And then the last thing, there is a variable that just got added in that you'll be able to, right now when you adjust this P&D gain strength, right, the PD balance, sorry, the ratio between the PD balance for pitch and roll is kind of the same, right? So as I move this up, all these gains go up together. If I move these down, all these go down together. So the ratio between pitch, D, and P is the same ratios you're going to get between pitch or a roll. P and D is the same ratio you're going to get between pitch, P and D. So it'll be another variable. What I'm thinking about doing, and actually I saw my radar to code it up, is to just add like a little box somewhere, maybe up here, just so you can toggle the number up and down a little bit. I really just don't want to add another slider. Not that it's hard, I just don't want to, I don't know. So let me know what you think about that. See if you think it should be a slider or not. All right, what else we got? And then George, I guess, do you have some, oh, you jumped out there. Let me see what we got on over here. George has a thing on here. Okay, Mark. So George has on here, I know you're busy, but here's a 5-inch that tuned exactly to Nurk's tune using the same motors he had. If you kindly like to look at this and see if you tune correctly in the setup I have, it appears to have quite an aggressive tune, made for performance and speed, which seems to have any suggestions. Too much to set up. Okay, let's check it out. So let's check out George's tune here. We download this a while as we're chatting. We'll pull that up. So this is for a 5-inch. All right, pull that up. All right, let me answer a couple more questions here, and we'll yank that up. Back, is there anything? So Bastian Sonderman is talking about tuning his Apex with the slider tuning tutorials. Disabled all the gyro low pass filters and put the D-min slider at 2.0. I'm still able to push the D term to the high 60s. Did I do anything wrong? No, sounds like you're doing everything right. You should be able to just keep pushing that P&D gain slider up until you start to hear trilling oscillations. And I usually limit, if I have like that Joshua Bardwell quad that I tuned up for him, I could keep pushing the P&D gain sliders up, but you get to this spot where I wasn't getting any trilling oscillation, but for a 5-inch, low 60s, it was kind of my personal limit. I'm like, it's high enough. Usually at that point, the prop wash is pretty good, if not almost non-existent. I mean, you can always draw it out, right? You just keep doing split S's and really, pushing it hard until you get some. Like, that's what people are like, oh, I don't have any prop wash. It's like, well, you're not trying hard enough, because if you send me your quad, I can guarantee I'll show you some prop wash with it. I just keep trying until it occurs. You just keep turning harder, keep turning harder. And if you don't get it that way, then it's like, okay, let's feather the throttle in real nice. Okay, well, I didn't get any that way. Okay, let's drop from a high altitude and feather the throttle real slight. And then, oh, there we go. Now I got some. So you're always going to have some, but you're trying to get to the spot, or at least for me personally, where I have to try fairly hard to get it to show itself. So I think with your Apex tune, if you're able to get the D's up into the 60s, you know, low 50s, low 60s, maybe high 50s. To me, I would probably sit there. Hopefully the prop wash is pretty good at that point, and yeah, just have fun. Hey, what's up, Crunked? How you doing? The world. UAV Tech. Hey, I've tried the various mixers available in Betaflight, and notice that there's smooth and a dynamic mixer as well. Yeah, I have not tried the new mixers. I think that is coming over. Actually, Boris B got interested in that a little bit. Jumped into the development group we have on Slack and coded some stuff. I wasn't aware that the mixer stuff got merged in. Check that out. So is that under mixers? I did not look. Get mixer. Oh yeah, look at that. So check this out, everybody. And I have not messed with it. But if you go into Betaflight 4.3 right now, and you just type in get mixer, you can see there's a mixer type. Legacy, linear, dynamic. I have not messed with it. I'll have to look that up, see what that's all about. I believe yeah, I'm not really sure. Well, obviously Legacy is the current one. I know they were looking at smoothing the way the mixer worked across. I have to remember back. There's a whole bunch of graphs in looking at it. It has to do with like air mode and how that reacts and comes into play. Honestly, if I recall correctly, and I'm not, I think some of it, they had this like really fancy looking mesh graph that, you know, looked smoother across. But if we started to really dig down into the old way it was working with air mode, it was kind of like the extremities where you saw that the mixer kind of jutted up, or I have to dig back into it, but don't let the fancy graphs distract you too much. You got to really look at like, okay, what's this graph actually saying to me? I remember digging into it when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, so where the legacy mixer is kind of abruptly adjusting, that's just air mode kicking in, and that's kind of a fringe. It's kind of on the extents of the flight performance envelope that are pretty rare to hit. So nevertheless, what would be interesting, I guess, is some back-to-back on the same quad, just changing from legacy to linear to dynamic, and see what you think. I think this, I believe this was inspired kind of by Boris checking out Emu Flight and was interested in the mixer stuff, but I don't think they had, I don't remember 2 proposals. I think there was just one, so I have to look back and see which one was going on there. Skadoosh asks, will this be able? Will this also be implemented, updated in the mobile app? Yes. So the Skadoosh was asking, will the sliders that we see in the Betaflight tuning thing here, will this be in the mobile app? Yeah. So for the Betaflight mobile app for Android, that is literally the same configurator. They have a build for Mac OS, they have a build for Windows, and then there's just a third build option for Android. So it's really the exact same configurator, just compiled for a different operating system. Now SpeedyB will, God bless them, have to code this up. I was thinking about that the other day. I was using SpeedyBee, and as we're like changing the configurator all the time, their poor engineers have to. They're probably like, oh, changing it again, and just all the little intricacies of that, because it's not, you know, it's more than meets the eye. It's like adding the sliders, and then there's now this behavior too, where, you know, with expert mode on and off, and you know, that's one part of it. Now the other part is these sliders now. When you're adjusting this, you're adjusting the PIDs direct. So that's one thing that is going to be different that I don't love, but I don't know how else you can deal with it. The sliders before were in the configurator. It would just update this grid, and then when you hit save, it would push it to the flight controller. Well, now the slider calcs, you know, what's wrong with that method, right? What's wrong with that method is the OSD didn't have sliders, right? So if you're on analog, your OSD didn't have the sliders. So what's the only way to get the OSD? I mean, the OSD is Betaflight. Like, you're not using the configurator, right? So the only way to get the OSD to have sliders is to have the calcs done in the flight controller. So literally, when I am now moving these sliders, it is pushing this value, it's pushing this slider value, the 0.89, to the flight controller. The flight controller is calculating the new PIDs and communicating that back to the configurator. So all the PID values here are live. So as you're moving these sliders, you're updating. There's no need to save. So in the past, if I didn't hit save and I exited and came back, you would have your old values. But you can see now, if I move these, I didn't hit save. If I come back, it's changed because the calcs are being done in the flight controller. Now the benefit is, you know, if I'm on analog and I have the OSD, then I can just go on my OSD, and it opens up the avenue for DJI to implement, you know, so that DJI can have the sliders if they wanted to in their you know, in their OSD thing, or to adjust, which would be really nice instead of the PID values, just to have these sliders in there. If you do not want to use the sliders anymore, or for whatever reason, you can always hit you can always change that variable here from roll pitch yaw to off. What's also nice is you can just change it to roll pitch, so I can actually set my yaw independently because it works quite a bit different. So I can say, you know, I'm just going to put that as 100, 100. Here I'd have to actually save that because that's a input value. But now my sliders are just going to work on the roll and pitch, and it's not going to mess with yaw at all. So I can actually set this to 150 or 0 or whatever I want to do. It just takes yaw out of the picture. So that's something to be aware of. So Robin FPV asks, will I be redoing my 2-pack tuner sliding guide? The guide is kind of the same. I just need to update it. But the 2-pack video, yeah, I'll probably make an update to that. I should use an analog quad, I guess, right? It'd be really neat to use the analog. For the best I can come up with for if you're using DJI is you're just really going to need to plug in with the app with either SpeedyBee or the Betaflight app with your phone. So that would be the best you do there. As I said on other live streams, I'm really digging this. I need to test fly it yet, but the SpeedyBee new flight controller, they have a SpeedyBee F7 flight controller. That's probably backwards to you guys, but that is a really nice looking flight controller, and it has Bluetooth, and you can just connect to it with the SpeedyBee app. Now it's going to take a little bit for them to update their slider stuff, but that would be a nice way to do it as well if you have a DJI, because then you don't even have to. You can just land, and as long as you're within Bluetooth range, you can make the adjustments, hit save, and then take off again. So that's pretty cool. The CLI has both. So Brandon says the CLI has both the PIDs and the slider values in a diff-all. Yeah. So in 4.3 again, there's this new set of variables called a simplified slider. So if you type in get simplified, you can see here's all the returns. So these are the actual slider values. So 100 is really 1. Just take off the 2 zeros. So you can see that this is the I-term slider, D, ID race. So you see all the different sliders that we have in there. And this is what is the configurator is actually just changing as long as it's turned on. As long as it's not set to off. The configurator is actually just passing these values to Betaflight. Betaflight's calculating the PIDs and passing it back to the configurator. So that's what's going on there. If this simplified slider mode is set to off, well then these just are not doing anything. What's pretty cool is that you can actually turn it, do some slider tuning. If you want to come off the simplified sliders, set it to off or whatnot, and put in manual values. So you could say, okay, I'm going to do that, but then I'm going to change this to 50 and 50, right? Save that. But then for some reason, you'd want to use the sliders again. You can come back in and enable sliders, and it's remembering these positions. So it's not like it sets these all back to default, because again, they're separate variables. So those still are saved. It's just you came off of those, started entering PIDs manually. If you wanted to turn the sliders back on, they're still there, that when you turn the sliders back on, they take on the last position you had for them before you turned it off, really. So I thought that was pretty nice. Okay, so let's take a look at this. See if there's anything else here in the Discord. I do have another one here. Let's take a look at George's log here real quick. So let me do a full screen on this, I guess, and see what we're seeing. So let me dissect this a little bit. So this is a 5-inch tune. It's a Nerk's tune. It appears to have quite an aggressive tune made for the performance and speed. So, tweaked. Okay, so let's see what you got. So it's 4.2.8, got it, 8.8. So we got 1K logging rate. Go into the header file here. So we got dmin off. We got D's of 43, 46. P's 55, okay. The sliders, I wish we had a slider thing in the configurator here. A lot of times I have to go look at what that is. So a 370, that is a slider value of about 1.5. So this equates to, well, it's not exactly, because this one's 300, but this low pass 2 is 170. So it kind of went customized on that, it looks like to me. We have notch 1 and notch 2 down pretty low. That's I wonder, there's got to be a reason George is doing that. We'll take a look at that. Looks like we have RPM filtering. Do we have RPM filtering turned on? Yeah, 2, 500, low 70. Looks like there's some low stuff going on. These 2 low notches. So this is the center and the cutoff. I'm wondering why you're doing 2 of them so tight like that. So there's like 1 at 100, 1 at 110 with the cutoffs at 90 and 95. So that's like crushing out some, they're very narrow static notches. And then the D term, looks like you have the slider there set at about 0.9. Let me see, maybe it's at 1. Low pass 1, low pass 2. Low pass 1, min, max. Let's So you have 65 and 210. It's not really equating. So you might have that kind of custom typed in. Same thing for the 190. Looks like that's kind of customized as well. So that's kind of off the sliders, which is fine. It's about a 1 point, well, it's about a 1.0 slider for that. It's not exactly that, but it's close. Okay. George, let me know, is this a 7-inch? Let's look at the log here. Like what? Oh, you said it's a 5-inch. No, you said it's a 5-inch. So let's look at the noise here. So to do that, we will turn on. Yeah, it's a little noisy. You can see here. So we will turn on the. I'll go to trace setup 0. So we hit 0 on that. And then you can see we want to turn on Expo, and you can see that there. So what I'm seeing here is you have some P-term oscillation going on, a lot of noise on the pitch or on the roll. I can see why you're doing this. So it looks like you have, well, this is probably prop wash. That's probably that oscillation that we're seeing. So I'm not seeing a real need for those static notches. I mean, you can see the static notches. If I look at, so a good way to look at the end product, right, is if I have gyro scaled recorded, and I go to trace setup 0, and turn exaggeration on, I can do a plot here of a spectrogram of the raw stuff. So this is raw on the roll. This is raw on the pitch. When you see stuff down at like the 60 area, I would think that's some sort of prop wash oscillation. We can look at that in a little bit. And this is raw on the yaw. So down here it looks fairly clean on the yaw, not too bad. Pitch, this isn't ideal. There's a bunch of stuff going on here. And roll, it's okay. I usually like to see a little bit more trough in here, but I've seen worse. So we got some oscillation here and here. If you look at then this one, this is the gyro after it's filtered. You can see those static notches are really crushing everything out right here. Go back, same thing with pitch because they're all at the same spot. And then roll. What I like to do is just go look at the D term values, and you can see again, it's really, those static notches are killing all this out really well. But oh, man, we got a lot of noise right there on that one. That's D term on pitch, so that's no good. So that high spike we're seeing here, let me just shrink this down. This big spike we're seeing here at 50 hertz or 60 hertz. A lot of times it's like, okay, what is that? So that is on the pitch axis. So we're looking along the pitch here and saying, okay, do we see anything weird at the beginning or end? I don't see anything weird at the end where it like you bounced or whatever. Same thing at the beginning. I'll look to see if there's anything weird at the beginning. I don't see anything there. So we don't have to like use the I and O keys to clip stuff out. But if I would have to guess, that is this. Yeah, right there. So you can see that oscillation. If you just measure peak to peak, and I know it's probably a little hard to see on the live stream, but you can see that it says 58 hertz. Well, that's exactly where my marker is here. You can see that is right at 58 hertz, 59, 58, right there. So that big spike we see is this specific oscillation that we're getting there. You can see that the D term is really magnifying that down here, and that's where we're getting, because when we're looking at this spectrograph, we're actually looking at these two lines down here. And you can see again, if I measure just peak to peak on those, that is that oscillation, right? It's 59. So that would tell me that, well, you do have a lot of noise that you're trying to deal with. What I would do on this is I would get rid of these static notches. Let me look back here. You might be providing some more input. Yeah, I would get rid of those static notches and see if that helps. Because if you have a lot of delay, if you have a lot of delay with filtering, you can get oscillations from that because there's so much delay. And having two static notches down low like this, that could be a part of that because you have fairly conservative low pass filters too. I would let your dynamic notch go low. So right where it says here, this dynamic notch, I don't see anything that you need to go that low though. If I look at the spectrograph, you're letting your dynamic notch go down to 125. So if I look at that on here, so that's 125 is how low you're letting your dynamic notch go. You're letting your RPM filters go down to 70, and I saw that, so they can go sit down here. So looking there, you're letting your dynamic notch go that low. Let's see if there's any raw noise below that. All right, so you have some here. So I might what I would probably do on this quad is turn off those static notches, let the dynamic notch go down to 100. So it can, whatever this is occurring, it can jump all over that. I think this is an artifact of the tune, so I would ignore this. I wouldn't worry about this. I think that's a tuning problem. So I think as we take out the delay and maybe make some adjustments on the PIDs, this will start to subside. And again, let's look at the yaw axis. Yeah, there's nothing really too low down here. So that should be able to take care of those two things. So what I would adjust on this, going back, it looks like you have your gyro, low pass. I would leave, you know, I think the low passes are fine for now. I know they're kind of customized. I personally would probably just use the sliders just to simplify stuff, but you don't need to. I would turn these off, these static notches, and I think you're all good here. I think with the dynamic notch setup, that's what I would do. See how that flies, get some stepped inputs. You know, if you get some stepped inputs with feed forward, turn down or turn to 0, that would be helpful, and then we can take a look at it from there. Go back to the chat here, see what else we got on the chat. So Dan asks, my quad developed an extra noise band on the gyro pitch access only. Roll looks basically the same as always. Is this the gyro failing? Probably not, Dan. I have a quad that has that same issue. The frames, one of the things we don't talk about too much is the frames wear, just like a car, right? They wear mechanically. The plates of depends how old your frame is, right? So the one that's happening on mine is the old Martian 2 frame that I've had since 2015, so it's like 6 years old now. And the glue that holds the carbon layers together it wears, it ages. You know, if you would just leave the frame go and don't even fly it, it will, you know, materials just break down over time. So that could be your issue. And I have a resonance peak on that quad now at, I think it's about 100 Hertz, and but it's only in the pitch axis, not on the roll. So I would not suspect it's the gyro. I have a video on my Patreon for my patrons on the uavtech.com and the insider thing. So if you just go to the uavtech.com, down at the bottom of the page, you'll see a whole bunch of Patreon videos. One is how to tell the difference between electrical and mechanical noise, like on your gyro if you happen to black box it. And it shows you what electrical noise looks like. To give you a real big brief, is what you would do is just do a couple rolls or flips. So let's see on George's log here if I have anything specific. I don't know if he has any sharp rolls or flips. Let me go to here. Yeah, he doesn't have a ton of sharp moves on here. Well, I can kind of use this. So let's flip over to here. So what I would do is to see if your quad has electrical noise issues, the best way to do it is to just black box some flips and rolls. So you can see here, this is a roll. It's not pushing the motors a lot. I mean, it's a full rate roll, but it's only at, you know, you can see here, it's only at 350 degrees per second. So it's not really taxing the motors a lot. If you had a higher rates, so if you're a racer and you have lower rates like this, maybe bump up the rates to do this. You know, go up to like 800 or 1,000 degrees per second, right? And that will really tax the motors. So what you want to do is you can go into the motors here, and then, so let me back up. If you go to theuavtech.com, and let me pull this up, I guess, and you go to the black box page, right? Just to walk this through a little bit. So we have this page right here, the black box, become a black box ninja. And down here at the bottom, there's these trace templates here. So you do a log on the moves I'm just going to tell you here in a second. And then you can download the log, download these trace templates. Usually if you have the latest black box, you'd want this one. This is just the instructions, like this is just a PDF. You would open the log file, then go up to the top here again and hit open. So you'd hit open, open the log, hit open again, which is super confusing. So I wish there was a button that said like load trace. You know, it's open source. Maybe I should add this myself. But I wish there was a button that said open trace, like open setup. It just feels weird to hit open and then hit open again for another file type. But anyways, you download the trace templates, you'd open the log, hit open this button again, click the trace template file. Then after that's opened, you can hit the number rows on your keyboard, which are these up top here, not the number pad. They're not going to work with the number pad. You need to hit the number row. When I say hit number 4, or you can hit these drop down now. There's this nice drop down here now. So you want to go to number 4. Then you can hit this graph setup down here, and you can hit add field. And what I would add in is amps. So where is it? Amperage. So if you have it now, you know, maybe it's not detected on your machine, or, you know, it depends, you know, if you're reading amp draw. But you can see down here, and what you'll see is your motors will spike up when you enter and arrest the move. And then you'll see this amp draw spike. So even at, you know, this is at 0 throttle, right? But obviously if your motors spike to enter into a move or exit from a move, even though you're not giving it a lot of throttle, the PID controller is still commanding 100% for half the motors. And if it is doing that and you're at 0 throttle, and then you see the gyro signal gets real jaggedy, or through a move here, and you can see all kinds of jags and stuff, noise in your gyro signal, that's telltale, that's electrical issue right off the bat, or bad gyro. And if you see that, you just got to replace the flight controller. 9 times out of 10, there would be one thing I would check. I would check the capacitor, make sure the capacitor, you know, soldering is nice and tight. If that's all good, you know, wiggle it around, make sure there's nothing, because I had a quad, somebody sent me that was an issue, and I just remelted the joints there, and then it was fine. But check your capacitor wiring. If that's all good and you still have that issue, then yeah, it's 100% the gyro. Somebody actually just put this on our Discord. Yeah, good. Yeah, George, give that a try. Somebody just put this on the Discord here. Let me see if I can zoom in. Let me save image. I can just pull this download here. I can pull this up. But if you see stuff like this, so he's in a sharp move, and you see the gyro, so you can see this is the raw, I don't know if you can see the red lines here, but if you can see these red lines here going, this is the raw gyro. And if it's going, you know, positive 300 degrees per second, negative 300 degrees per second, positive, that is not your quad, that's electrical. Your gyro is working on detection of electrical differences, and it's an electrical issue. So like he was asking, is this an electrical issue? And it's like, yep. As soon as you see something like that where it's really dramatic and drastic, that's definitely electrical. But you can check out that video. It can look more subtle as well. So that's where I would do on that. So Brandon asks, what do you think about using custom motor mix yaw values for the asymmetric hex configuration like the Hex Explorer? Yeah. The sum of the torque moments of the same direction props are is not over CG. Hell, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, Brandon. So yeah, I don't have any thoughts on it. I'd have to dissect where you're getting at on this. Customize motor mix yaw values with an asymmetrical hex configuration. Asymmetrical hex. Hexacopter. Okay, so it's like these little hexes, but they're not symmetrical on either side. Or front to back, I guess you mean. Some of the torque moments, same direction prop is not over CG. Some of the torque, because of the hexacopter is not symmetric. I see what you're getting at. Yeah. Well, I think the PID loop, so I think what he's talking about is, you have a hexacopter and the motor layout is not symmetric around the center of gravity. Which you could say, I mean, that can be for any setup. It doesn't have to be a hexacopter, right? You could have a quadcopter and that could be the same thing depending on what you have. Like the Shendrones, the thick, like these cinecopters, the center of gravity on those things is weird because the camera's so heavy, so it's like shifted forward big time, and the center of movement, or the center where it's a quadcopter, and where it's an X configuration, so where the center of that is not the center of gravity because the center of gravity is shifted forward. Anytime you're pushing away from that, it's probably not ideal it's just more that the PID controller has to deal with. It's harder for the PID controller to do its job. I think it will adjust accordingly, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult because it's not expecting the reaction it's getting. So it's getting a reaction that it's making commands. The PID controller doesn't think, so it's making a command. There is an expected mixer amount that is pushing. It's saying, "Hey, go to the right." The mixer is saying, "Okay, well that would mean spin up these motors this way," and it's actually doing it a little different. So then it's kind of adjusting as it goes. So I think the PID controller will auto adjust. It's just more it has to deal with. So that's what I think about that. You could probably deal with it a lot in the gains, or you could do a mixer, a custom mixer. Something that I don't think people forgot about a lot. Let me bring this up. So you can do custom mixers, and I think we move away from that. It might be a good time for people to know about or relearn about this tool, Mixer Calc. So there's a Mixer Calc tool that iForce 2D, he's a YouTuber, has put together. Here it is. And this is, I think this is from like 2015. So this thing has been out here forever. So that link is up here. I'll drop it in the chat. You guys should save this link somewhere because you just never know when you might need something like this. So I'll put that in the chat. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to position motors. You can add motors as well. I forget how you do it. Press, it's down here somewhere. How do you add stuff? If I recall correctly, forget how you add, but I know you can add them. I was looking at, he has a video. If you watch this video, he talks about how to use this tool. But you can actually add motors as well. You get the constraints all set up, and then you can export this. You would use the Betaflight clean flight, and then this would be, you know, you'd paste this basically in your CLI once you have this all set up, and that will customize your mixer to more closely replicate what you may want if you have a kind of an exotic setup. So some of these hexacopters, I guess, Brandon, that are asymmetric, you know, if you have one of those and you're curious, it might be worth, if they don't have a custom motor mix on it, it might be worth, you know, working that out. You can really just get, measure motor post to motor post and get it all configured out, and with the center of gravity here, and then, you know, copy and paste this and push this out. I'm not going to go, I'd have to refresh myself on this, but you can add motors, and you have to constrain them, and you have to really just actually measure your quad itself. Again, just watch this video. He goes through it in details and show you exactly how to do it. You can, it doesn't really matter motors in or motors out, but he gives you different templates here you can start with. So here's a hex to start with. Here's an octo. So yeah, there's just a couple different things you can do with it. It's a pretty neat tool. So check that out. Yeah, that's some old school stuff, isn't it, Skadoosh? Yeah, that's like back in the day. I forgot about this for a long time, but I think with some of these cine lifters and these like long range hexacopters now, and it just, you know, we're getting into just different configurations. You know, it might be, we need to kind of look at some of these custom motor mixes here again. You're kind of going outside the fray. Obviously, if you're just using a quadcopter in an X configuration or Stretch X, you're fine. I wouldn't worry about this. But some of these other ones, yeah, it might be worth taking a look at. All right, got a super chat here. Dimitar asks, thanks for the $5 super chat. When applying full yaw, upon release, the quad jumps in the air for a brief moment. Why would that be? Everything else with the tune and black box seems okay. So that's normal. Motors spin up faster than they spin down. So let me switch back to here. So what you're going to do is you're going to get, when you go into a yaw move, two motors spin up, two of them spin down. Since these spin up faster than these will spin down, you're going to get a jump, especially if you're, you know, just doing a twitch yaw move. There's some things you can do to make that better. If you don't need that yaw to be that responsive, if you can basically lag it out a little bit, then you won't have that issue as much. So decrease, it's kind of a give and a take with PID tuning, right? So I guess my first suggestion would be, when you're doing the tuning, that's when we're doing that stepped yaw move, and yes, it's going to jump up in the air. But how often do you do that in flight? Not very often. At least I don't. The only time I really hit the yaw hard is in an inverted yaw spin, right? Because you're going upside down, you're trying to flip over quick. So it's going to jump, and it's going to jump, you know, you're inverted now. So it's going to, and I'm not exactly facing straight down, so it's going to kind of jump back a little bit as it's doing that. You can soften your yaw input, so no feed forward, and then low I term, or I'm sorry, back that up, low P term. And the P term in Betaflight's default is pretty low already for yaw. So you'd have mostly just I term influence. You can even, you know, lower your I term. Now, there's going to be a downside with that. If your P term is too low on yaw, when you spin around for a prop wash moves, you might notice that like a little jerk, like a little yaw jerk when you're doing a pretty stern roll and pitch moves, pretty tough roll and pitch moves, or some prop wash. You get in some prop wash and you see like a little yaw jerk going on. That's because your P term is too low on yaw. So you say, well, how do I get both? It's like, you kind of can't. If you're going to really command yaw strong, then it's going to jump and it's going to push, you know, make motors spin up faster, and then they can slow down. The other thing you can do to make the motor spin down as fast as possible is set your PWM frequency to 24 kilohertz in BL Heli if you have it set to 48. PWM 24 kilohertz is known to increase braking torque on motors, so it will help with that braking torque to reduce it. I don't know if it will be that much noticeably different, but it's something you can try. So give those two things a shot and see if it helps out. But it's somewhat, there's nothing wrong. That's just like a physical limitation, just because of that motor spin down faster than up kind of a thing. Going back, so there was another something here in the office hours. I do apologize. You were right. Oh, so George was on George's quad. That was a 7-inch. So okay, yeah, that made a little bit more sense because when I was looking at the log, it kind of looked like a 7-inch. But so okay, so that log we were just looking at was a 7-inch. I would still do what I said. And then do some twitch moves on that, George, to see if there's just so we can take a look at the PD balance, because they're on a 7-inch, a lot of times your P and D gain are the same strength. So you had 50s P and 40s D. I wouldn't be too surprised if that was a little too much PD, which maybe is a part of that oscillation too. So do some twitch moves, straightforward flight, and just twitch the sticks back and forth. Do a couple full rates. Your rates are a little low on that. Maybe bump them up a little bit, just like double, like go to 600 or something. Just for this, keep your rates because that's what you're used to flying for normal. But just for the tuning process, maybe get those a little higher, and then we can kind of look at that. Yeah, I can take a look at the 5-inch here. Let me get this. Razix has a question here. Do you have any issue with noise on that Speedy BF7? So I did not. Razix has a question on the Patreon channel here. I did not load that up yet. So he had a Speedy BF7. It has a MPU 6000 gyro chip. So I think, because I believe Razix, you also loaded another flight controller on that quad. And you also had the same electrical issues and gyro stuff, if I'm recalling correctly from some chats in between the last live stream and this live stream. So I'm hopeful it's your quad, because that Speedy B, I really like it. If it has like electrical issues and stuff, I'm going to be disappointed. But I had not loaded that up yet. But he's saying they sent me a new one, but in the end, I have to use the capacitor on the power pads that connected to the ESC. Yeah, so normally your ESCs will need to have caps. Yeah, so if you didn't have any capacitance on your quad, you definitely need to do that. So did you have 4-in-1 ESCs? So that's a question. Or if you don't have a 4-in-1 ESC, if you had individual ESCs, you have a capacitor on each of the positive and negatives going to each individual ESC. If you had a 4-in-1, then you have a capacitor on the battery lead, or where the battery lead ties into the 4-in-1 ESC. So if you didn't have that, that's definitely your issue. As well as a cap on the XT60 connector. So he was doing cap on the XT60 and the caps on the power leads to the ESCs. And one on the CADX Vista. So now he has a lot of capacitance, which is not connected to the flight controller. But I asked because I had less noise when I shut off the barometer than when I turned it back on since the logs. Okay, interesting. So he's saying he had noise on his gyro. He had less when he turned off the barometer. I've never seen anything like that. I don't know. That's interesting. So the barometer was introducing, you're postulating the barometer was introducing electrical noise on the 3.3 volt rail. I don't know enough about electrical design to know if that's a thing, but it sounds like it's a thing, right? If that's the experience you were getting. That's interesting. Well, I will definitely check it out once I get that loaded up, but yeah, we'll go from there. So let's check out George's 5-inch log here as well. Download this, open this up. While that's opening, let me see if there's any other questions here. Hey, Double A, how you doing? Good to see you. Skadoosh is a celebrity, absolutely. How's it going over there, Skadoosh? How's the corona? It's old news over there. Hopefully it's old news. Hopefully it's old news here soon, but still not old news exactly. We're getting there. Of course, the cat wants to come up. All right, so let's take a look at George's log here. Let's go back to the small view. You don't need to see me too much. All right, so this is a 5-inch, 8K, 8K, again, Betaflight 4.1. Let's look at the tune. We got D-min off again, 3540, 6080. We have 250. So that is, I think, again, I have to look at these. So 200 and 500. So that is a slider value of 1.0 on the gyro. Yep. And then for the D term, that is a slider value of, looks like, around, yeah, 1.5. So this is a D term. So gyro filter slider 1.0, D term filter slider 1.5. You got a dynamic notch on there. You got RPM filter on there. Gyro scaled. All right, so that's feed forward 200. So yeah, this should be kicking it. Let's see what we got. So let's look at raw gyro. Let's see if there's anything at the beginning. Nope, no weirdness at the beginning. There's a little weirdness at the end, not much, just a little bounce there. So what I would do is get near the end, hit the O key, and that clips out that last bit. If you wanted to clip out the beginning, you hit the I key, and that clips out the very beginning. And then we can look at the gyro scaled. Check that out. So this amount of raw noise, I think it's as simple. A lot of times people ask me, like, what's okay noise-wise? If it's green, you're good. If it's yellow, if it's red, if it's red and it's very peaked, you'll be all right because the notches will jump on that. If it's red and it's like diffused, that's gonna be bad. That's not gonna be good for you. Yeah, you can work through it, but you're not gonna get like a really great tune out of it probably. So roll looks good. Pitch is fine. A little bit more here, so you can see it's getting a little yellow, a little bit, but it's all right. See a nice trough here up to 125 hertz. Nice trough. Let's see over here. See a nice trough. You can see this is what you want to see. You don't want to have a lot of noise between, let's say, 45 and if you see a spike or two, that might be prop wash in here. It's usually around the 50s to the 70s range. Typically it's right at 60. So that could be prop wash. Obviously, if you don't have prop wash moves, if you don't remember flying and having prop wash, then if you have spikes here, then that's not prop wash and that's problematic. But you know, if you see some spikes down here, that could easily just be prop wash. So I would just ignore that. But generally you can see this has a nice trough, and then this up here is all motor noise. You can see on the yaw here as well. So here you can see now we're getting at the red and the yellow, but this is pretty peaked, you know, so it's not dispersed. So let's see how the filters are doing with it. And you can see, bam, just kills that. So the filters are knocking that out, no big deal. And specifically on yaw, we don't use, in Betaflight at least, I mean, Betaflight does have a D term on yaw that you can use. I don't know why you would. There's no logical reason to use yaw D term, but you'll see some firmwares do. Just ask them to explain why, and explaining why and saying it flies better that's not an explanation. that's a I don't know. It's what I don't know. I don't know. That's a weird That's a weird response. That's not a real explanation. The reason I wouldn't use determ on yaw is because yaw responds so slow to begin with. You don't need more dampening. And case in point, you have this spike here. Now this spike is knocked out really well by the filtering, but say it even wasn't. We don't have any determ on yaw, so it's really not going to be amplified. You can see we only have it on pitch and roll. So let's look at roll determ. You can see filtering is hitting that really well. You don't have any issues there. And pitch, again, filtering's hitting that really well. So your filtering is, I would say, good to go here. Your gyro filter 1.0, you could probably go a little bit more aggressive on it, but depends how aggressive you want to be with it. So yeah, you can see just scrubbing through the determ down here, you can see there's not a lot of oscillations, not a lot of spikes. If you're going for more smooth flying, where you're not getting real aggressive with it, I would just leave it. If you want to get a little bit more aggressive with it, get the prop wash a little bit better, then yeah, you might want to move that gyro filter up to like 1.5 as well. You can just see how it is, right? You can see like, okay, well, I'm gonna try a gyro filter 1.5. I think you could on this quad that has fairly low noise. See if you like it more or not. If you're like, nah, I don't like that, you know, just put it back down to 1. So that's that. Now we go to trace template 4 and take a look at the tune, or you can just hit this drop down here and go to 4. And now we're looking for sharp moves. And yeah, I don't see a little oscillation going on here. I don't see any sharp moves though. So you got good tracking here. We're only going up to like 70 degrees or 400 degrees per second. It's not that fast. Feed forward's a little spiky there. That's all right though. So this, you can see this oscillate. You don't really see it down here though. So you can see it in the terms up here, but down here the gyro is right on top. You know, your sticks is this green line, right? The gyro is what the quad's actually doing. You can see there's a little bit here, but this is all generated, this oscillation. If you do see any of that, that's all generated by feed forward, because you can see feed forward is pushing up and down. So that could just be your RC signal. This has to do with the latency consistency stuff I've been talking about a lot. I don't know what you're using on this, but so yeah, this has biquads. This is just the standard filtering. Your 10 millisecond, so you have 10 millisecond packets. So this is probably like an FR sky or something like that. So you could be having some jumping in packets in here. What you could do, I mean, I don't know. Let's see if I see any other sharp moves here. You're right on the sticks here. Yeah, you're right on the sticks almost all the time. I might bring down that feed forward a little bit. I think the feed forward's a little high, and it's causing some oscillations back and forth. You can see it. You know, it's what's pushing this up and down, and the terms are trying to fight against it. So you have it at 200. I might bring that down to 150. I think you're all over the sticks. Same thing here. You're all over. So what I mean by all over, the quad's exactly following the sticks. I think you're in good shape there. So I might do that. Let's bring those down a little bit. You know, obviously with a better RC, like if you had Express LRS or Tracer or Ghost or any of that stuff, those packets would be smaller and you'd have less feed forward jitter to begin with. So, I mean, that's the hype. That's what they're, it's not a hype, it's just a real thing. That's why they're spending money and resources on those low latency control links. It's because of this stuff, so that you can use higher amounts of feed forward for like racing environments, so you can get your quad to track right on the sticks like you have here. So I think you're you know, your tracking is really well, so you probably could reduce feed forward a little bit here. You can actually see you're overshooting here a little bit. Your quad's actually in advance of your sticks, so your feet, that's kind of like classic. It's like it's moving at a faster rate than you're even commanding it, just in this little section, not by too much. But that's a little bit of a sign of like, hey, you know, bring that feed forward down just a pinch. You're kind of overdoing it. If you do too much feed forward, right, when you move your sticks, your quad will rotate faster than your sticks are actually commanding. Hence the concept of feed forward. You're feeding forward that signal in time, and if you have too much of it, obviously it's gonna make your quad predict what you're thinking, kind of a thing, as they say. So I might bring that down a little bit. I'm not seeing any real sharp deliberate tuning moves. I think that's what I would normally look for. You know, I really, to tune this for P&D, you really need to take off. I think things look good generally. I see a little bit of oscillations going on, so my first thing would bring down that feed forward. The second thing I would do is increase your gyro filter slider. So the two things I would do again is I would bring this gyro filter slider up to 1.5 as well, and then I would take these feed forward values down to, like, I don't know, I would say like 150. I would just do 150 across the board and see how that goes. That should, I think, take care of oscillations because of those two things, because you're not gonna have so much delay, or you're gonna have less delay from your gyro signal from your actual real movements, so that will help with oscillation stuff. And then obviously feed forward, pushing a little less will also help. So those are the two things I would do. All right, 10 more minutes here on the stream. What else do we got? Brandon asks, I helped Tomb Emo Flight on their Discord. I'm always telling them to turn off y'all. You're talking about D-term? Yeah. Yeah, that comes from Flight 1. I don't know why. I don't know why people think that you need y'all on D-term, because nobody understands why they need y'all on D-term to have explained it, right? And if you can't explain to me why you're doing it, that means you don't understand why you're doing it. You're just doing it because, I don't know, you've seen it as a preset or something. So I wouldn't use y'all on D-term. I have a response, but I'm not going to say it. If you would want to use y'all on D-term, why would you want to? I'm not going to say it, because then I'll open the door for people using that response. I want somebody else to explain it to me. And it's not so much for the dampening part of the D-term, but there's other aspects of it. The problem with my response is not for the value of D-term that people use on y'all, right? Because they'll use really low, like 5. Like the D-term of 5 is not going to do anything, especially for how slow the yaw axis moves. It's literally not going to do anything but magnify a little bit of noise that comes through on the yaw term. So why? So I don't get it. Let me see here. Skadoosh, you should do a live stream, buddy. Why don't you do? Well, I guess you did. Did you do live stream? Did you do? Yeah, I don't see. You should do more live streams. Why don't you do more live streams? Come on, man. Yaw's inertia moves, not a PID movement. Yeah. So yaw, the initial move on a yaw, when you hit the sticks, there's an inertia twist, right? 2 motors are spinning up, 2 are spinning down. And they are rotating in opposite directions. So there's an inertia that kicks you into the move. But if you hold yaw, just take a quad and hold it in the air, and hold, it's easier in FPV, right? But just hold the yaw stick over, and it will just keep spinning. So the initial kick is inertia, but after that, it's just the drag of the props, right? Because you'll see I-term winds up to keep it sustained. And it just has to do with, you have 2 props spinning one way faster than 2 props spinning the other way slower, and they have drag, air drag, and that will just keep it spinning, because inertia wouldn't, that change in inertia goes away, right? After you get that initial kick of inertia, that the inertia is done, right? Because you're changing that angular rotational into physical movement. So that's the power transfer, like that's the conservation of momentum, conservation of energy. So that motor rotation energy change translates into the quad changing in rotation. But then to keep that up, you have drag of props going one way or props going the other way, and that's what keeps you spinning on yaw terms. So it's really kind of two things. Let's see if there's anything more on the Discord here. Oh, I got more. George got more. What design? This is designed to be a case and high performance. Yes. Yeah, I understand, George. It was a high performance one, but I still would do those two things. Next two things. If it was my quad, I would take the gyro filter slider up to 1.5, and then take the feed forward down a little bit. 175, 150. I'd probably go to 150, 175 and see how that works. But yeah, you're right on the sticks, so you're in good shape. I can see my kids and wife are coming home. So we got 5 more minutes on the stream. I'm going to close the door because they're going to come in like a bat. So last questions here. Are you sure that RC pushing the feed forward during the rotation? So feed forward on yaw works the same as any of the other axes. Yeah, smash the like button, guys. Come on. Or my kid won't be able to play Fortnite. So if you want that little backstory, because I have that little end card thing where my kid's sitting here and he says, hey, smash the like button, I want to play Fortnite. That is because a couple years ago he wanted to play Fortnite and I said no. And he's like, well, what if I make a video and get a billion likes? And I'm like, if you get a billion likes, I will let you play Fortnite, because a billion likes would be a billion watches, which would be like $1 million of revenue or something like that. And I'm still waiting for that billion like video. He can get it yet, but he actually does play Fortnite now. He's like 2 years older now, so it's like impossible to keep those guys away from that kind of stuff with all their friends doing it. So we regulate it, but nevertheless. But yeah, smash that like button. Appreciate it, guys. Any last minute questions on here? Yeah, George, no problem. I hope that helped give some input. I'm probably going to jump off here. 2 more minutes on the stream. Hopefully everybody's having a good weekend. Yeah, I really want that. I want a billion likes. I don't know about the kids, but I want a billion likes. Skadoosh, do you want a billion likes? I bet you want a billion likes. I wonder if there's any video on YouTube that has a billion likes. So one more thing from Razek's on here. I used a different flight controller on the quad, so this is the same one with the SpeedyBee F7. Got no issues with the quad, but I have had the SpeedyBee F7 V2 on 2 different quads, and one seems to have noise electrical. And I have removed all the solder joints and resoldered the quadcopter together a few times, actually, with each time using a different ESC motor. So on and so forth. I'd use the caps on the JST connector between the flight controller and the ESC, another one on the XT16 pads, and another off the CADX Vista. Yeah, well, we'll see what I get. So the quad that I'm going to put the SpeedyBee F7 on is going to have 4 individual ESCs. It's going to have a cap on EHC, so it really takes out the electrical noise issues. And we'll see. We'll see how it performs. I hope it performs well, but it doesn't say, I haven't heard any other bad reports of the SpeedyBee F7. I know you're having a lot of issues, but I haven't heard anything else. So don't ruin my dreams, man. It looks like a really nice flight controller. The feature set really looks nice, but if it doesn't perform well after I do my testing, well, that will be a shame. He says he got 2 similar ones from SpeedyBee, had the same issues, but if you had them on the same quad, then could be something else. I know we talked about motors. Motors, I did talk to, one of the things that I didn't know is that motors can affect your electrical noise as well. So I confirmed that with Ryan Harold. The larger motors you have, the more electrical noise it will have. Here's the other thing. So I always thought electrical noise was just from the ESC. You could have electrical issues and it could not be your ESCs at all. It could just be your motors. One way to have a less electrical noise is to actually go to 48K PWM frequency. So everything's a trade-off, right? I just said on a previous thing with the yaw jump, if you go to 24 kilohertz, it increases the braking force of your motor, so it will help with yaw jump. Yes. But you will get slightly more electrical noise from your ESCs or motors, or you could. Depends on your capacitance, depends on your ESCs, depends on the motors, depends on a lot of things. But if you are having some electrical issues, one of the things you can do is go up to 48 kilohertz PWM frequency. That should help electrical noise with your ESCs specifically, and then also your motors. Do note, if you're in the racing environment though, when you go up to higher PWM frequencies, it's going to make your ESCs run hotter because the FETs are acting faster on and off. The on and off switching is faster. So if you're concerned about burning out ESCs because you're just on it all the time and you're just really beating it, well, 48K or higher, 96, whatever, you're going to have more heat on your ESCs. Typically, it's if you have good ventilation and all that kind of stuff, it's not an issue, but something to think about. If you're blowing ESCs a lot and you're running 48, maybe try 24. But again, if you have electrical issues, go the other direction. So just some options there. All right, everybody, that is it for this live stream. We're at 5:30 here. Appreciate everybody coming out, and we'll see everybody on the next one. Looking to do some exciting updates here. I don't know if you caught my my little short on the Ghost, but the newest Ghost firmware is really looking like it has a lot of potentials. Tony Cake, sorry, actually texted me. He is really happy with the results he saw there. He said he just kind of uploaded that beta before he went on vacation or something like that. So he was really thinking the stars aligned. I'm like, well, whatever you did, I don't care. It looked really good. Keep going that direction. I had really low jitter. That was the issue I was always seeing with Ghost before, is that they were doing faster frame rates. The feature set of the Ghost is really nice, but I had a lot of jitter in the signal, and I didn't really like that. So it seemed that this latest firmware update really addressed that. So if you do have a Ghost unit, check out that latest firmware update. Again, if you're a patron, I went through how to get it, gave you the branch code and all that kind of stuff. If you're not, I'm sure you can text Tony or whatever. You can get it for somebody else because it is a beta, and I was cautious about making a public video showing people how to get beta controller firmware on their quad. I just don't have as much experience with it. Betaflight's, there's a bunch of check boxes you're checking, so you're taking that risk on your own. That's a different thing. This is kind of different to me, so I don't know. So that's the way I did it. But thanks everybody again for coming out. Yeah, Tony did see it. So thanks everybody again for coming out. Appreciate your time. Get out there. It's kind of a garbage weekend this weekend, but if you're here in the United States, enjoy your Memorial Day. Hopefully Monday is going to be nice. And yeah, happy flying. Thanks everybody.